Hi, everyone, and welcome to our next gen training, Meeting Makeover, How to Maximize Your Time. I'm Candace Thorson, Managing Editor at GovLoop, and today I'm also your moderator. So thank you so much for being with us. Before we get into the content, I want to give a special thank you to our Alliance partners, Gov White Papers and WAPA, for helping us put on this next gen training. And so on to today's topic, meetings, whether you love them or hate them, they're a critical part of how they get done, and they're not going anywhere. And we probably all feel at times like we have way too many of them. If you're like me, some days you look at your calendar and think, when am I not in a meeting? So now it's a good time, especially as you're approaching the end of the year and such, to sort of step back and audit and look at how you can streamline your meetings so that everybody who attends them finds them valuable. So you're not just meeting to have a meeting. We have a workplace expert who's going to give us advice on how to do just that. She has a really awesome PowerPoint. But before we get to the content, I do have to give some quick housekeeping items. So if you just bear with me for a moment. If you're on Twitter, please share what you learn using the hashtag NextGenGov. There are great resources available for you on the console as always, so check those out. We also have closed captioning, so you can access that by going on the bottom right-hand side of the media player. If you run into technical problems, just put a note in the Ask a Question tab, and Andrew, my colleague, is going to help you out. And you can use that same portal to ask questions of Mary, our expert, and she definitely wants to hear from you, so feel free. There's an open chat so that you can talk among your fellow attendees in a public way. And to access that, you just go on the blue group chat button in the middle of your screen. And then check your inboxes because we're going to send you a link to the entire session on demand. And then finally, we're giving out 1 CPE credit for your participation today. So to get the credit, you need to take all polls, participate in the entire session, and then afterwards fill out the post-event evaluation form. So I'm all done talking about all that stuff. I want to introduce our speaker. We have Mary Abijay. She is author of Managing Up, and I want to thank you so much for being here. I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you, Candace, and hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us today, a couple of days before Thanksgiving. I'm super excited to be here to talk about making your meetings matter and making a little makeover, perhaps. So if you're like me, most of your meetings that you attend are like kind of wah, or they're not really that great, or they're kind of a waste of time. And we all hate meetings that are a waste of time. So in the spirit of thinking through how we can be more efficient, how we can be more successful, how we can be more effective with our meetings, I'm going to give you a whole bunch of tips, tricks, and techniques so that you can maximize your time. Now, I know many of you run meetings, and many of you are participants in meetings, and many of you do both. So today's session is going to be a combination. Most of the tips, tricks, and techniques I'm going to talk about, you can use whether you are an attendee, a participant, or a meeting leader. So get ready to chat, get ready to take some polls, buckle your seatbelts, people, because I have a lot of information to give you in a very short amount of time. So the first thing I want to know from you is, as a meeting attendee, not as a leader, but as an attendee, what are some of your biggest pet peeves in meetings? What drives you cray-cray when you're sitting in the meeting? So let me see in the chat box, what drives you insane in the membrane?
I like that, insane in the membrane. Right? I'm going to use that from now on.
That's starting late, says
starting late.
Yep,
yes.
That's a passive nature. Passive, yeah, not staying on the agenda. Long meeting, says Rebecca. No agenda. Folks not participating. Long meetings, getting off topic. No agenda. Poor facilitation. No follow-up. Lack of participation. We talk about the same things over and over. I love that. When the speaker reads from the slides and is not engaging, you guys got it. These are the things that really derail meetings. When we start late or we end late, if there's no clear purpose, why are we here? When there's scope creep, we're here to talk about bananas, but suddenly we're talking about apples. When just a few people take over the whole meeting, people who are not prepared, whether it's the meeting leader or other participants, low engagement or being talked at, lack of a strong facilitator or a strong leader, and no action items. Could have been an email, says Tammy. Absolutely. These are the things that ruin meetings. So we're going to talk about ways that you can make sure that these meeting derailers aren't derailing your next meeting. Because we want to think about what makes a great meeting. They don't just happen. We don't just say, let's all get together and talk. Great meetings are actually designed, and I use the term design very intentionally. It's not just creating an agenda, it's designing a conversation. Great meetings are led well. That means there is somebody who is actually actively leading that meeting. We prepared for the meeting, both as a leader and a participant. What we're doing is we're setting the conditions for a successful conversation to achieve some outcome. Now, this can take 5 minutes or it can take 5 days. I've been a professional facilitator for over 20 years. Some meetings that I'm hired to facilitate take weeks and weeks of planning. Some take 5 minutes. So you have to really understand what kind of meeting you are leading, what your objectives are, and then you need to plan appropriately. Here are my 5 big tips for today. 1, take the lead. 2, design, again, the word design, for engagement and dialogue. You got to manage your participants. You can have the best design in the world, but if you let people run amok in your meetings, you've just had a meeting run amok. Being able to recap and follow up. And then finally, we all need to be good participants. So when I say take the lead, I mean this in a couple of ways. Number one, you have to be willing to step into that role of a meeting leader, that role of a facilitator. That might mean that you're going to have to intervene on inappropriate behaviors or derailing behaviors. You're going to try to keep the meeting on track and on target. And you're going to have to do the pre-work in order to make sure that this meeting is well designed. So we've all kind of got to step into that lead position, really take responsibility for creating the conditions for success for an engaging meeting. First thing we want to do is we really have to determine our purpose. Everything falls from purpose. Many people start planning a meeting by creating the agenda. That's not right. What you want to do first is the purpose. Why are you meeting? What are the outcomes? What are the issues that need to be discussed? Who needs to attend your meetings? And then finally, ask yourself, do you really need a meeting, or could you just send an email? Are you really having a meeting, or do you just need to present information? And I have a big hang up around people who call presentations meetings. Presentations and meetings are 2 different things. If we're just presenting information to somebody, that's a presentation. A meeting assumes that there is going to be dialogue. A meeting assumes there's going to be conversation. So you really want to make sure that you are calling this a meeting if it really is a meeting. I don't know, Mary, if this is being recorded or not. That's not a question for me. Time is changing. All right, so here's what you want to do when you want to go from, yes, Kristen Williams, meeting equals interactions. When I think about meeting, I think about it as a series of conversations that people need to have in order to accomplish something. So when we design meetings for engagement, we start with this. We start with the purpose. Let me get this slide up. We start with a clear purpose. What needs to happen? Once we're clear about why we are meeting and what the outcomes are, then we think about what are the conversations that we need to have as a group in order to reach that purpose. Once I then identify the different conversations of the meeting, then I have to remember who are the right people. Who are the people that need to be involved in these conversations? Who are the people that need to participate in this meeting for our purpose? Once those 3 things are decided, then we create an agenda. That's when we start timing things out. That's when we start thinking about what conversations we're going to have, how are we going to have them. At that point, we're also going to think about how are we going to engage people, right? It's not just sitting around a table, BSing, right? We want to think about what are some engagement techniques. How are we going to get this information? How are we going to structure these conversations? I'm a big fan about getting physical in meetings. And I don't mean like getting physical or like beating people up or exercising. I mean about doing things that are interactive more than just talking at each other. So doing things that might be a little more creative, things that are a little bit more engaging with the whole human being that is in your meeting. And this is regardless of whether we're in person or virtual. It's about getting that interactivity going in creative ways that keep people engaged. So here are a couple tips for you to use. These are some tips that facilitators and meeting leaders can use to make sure we are fostering dialogue. Remember, meetings are about dialogue. So as a meeting leader, we should be summarizing, validating, and exploring other people's opinions. So for example, I might, let's say that Candace says, ask Candace, should we have our meetings in the morning or in the afternoon? And Candace will give me a reason, and I'll summarize it. Thank you, Candace. So Candace thinks we should be in the morning. What do other people think? That's how we summarize, validate, and explore. People want to feel heard. Make sure you as a meeting leader are giving them the acknowledgement of their ideas. Using things like plus deltas and pros and cons are great ways to foster dialogue. So for example, let's say we're trying to decide the best time to have our meetings. We might create a list of we might say morning or afternoon, and we might create a list of all the pluses of going in the mornings, and then all the deltas or the cons for going in the afternoon. Let's say we're reviewing our last project. We could say everything that worked well in the project, and then the delta is everything that we could do more of, less of, or differently in the project. Whenever you can structure a conversation, it's going to help people engage with it. Thinking about how your room is set up or how your virtual room is set up is really important. When you have people just around a large conference table, that's going to create a slightly more stilted or formal conversation. If you have people standing up in a meeting, like a stand-up huddle, you're going to have a faster, more, what's the word I'm looking for? You're going to faster, less formal, I'll just say a less formal meeting, like more impromptu. So think about how you set up your meeting. If you have people sitting around chairs without a table, that's going to have a whole different energy. So don't just assume you have to sit around a big old conference table. Really think about how the physical environment's going to impact people's dialogue. Assigning roles is another great tip in order to get more engagement. And the roles could be you're taking notes, you're a timekeeper, you're this, you're that. Or you could do like your role in this meeting is to be negative Nelly. Like you're going to like find all the holes in our idea. You're going to be blue sky Bobby, right? You're going to find all the great things. So you can assign people roles. You're going to be like what our boss is going to ask us about. Like you can assign people different roles to have them think about whatever you're talking about in different ways. When you're having a meeting to make a decision, I really cannot stress this enough. Make sure you take a few minutes before you make a decision to determine the criteria for the decision. I know that you've all been in meetings where you're hashing out a decision, but then someone says, well, what's our criteria? Name the criteria first. Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. Do make room for your introverts. And I'm talking to you, my extroverts. That means allowing some silence to happen. Research shows that introverts take about 8 seconds of processing before they're willing to speak on something. So make sure you're having some space. I'll give you some ideas of how to do that in a moment so that your introverts have a chance to speak up. If that time passes, many introverts just decide not to speak up at all. If you are the leader, if Kristen Williams says less formal tends to lead to greater communication, giddy up, girl, you are 100% right. Fun playing musical chairs in a day-long event. I love that idea. It's a great idea. Thank you, Victor. Yeah, everybody keep like sharing your tips and techniques because this is an art form. There's so many different ways we can do this. All right, if you are the leader and you're bringing your team together to like discuss something, try to speak last on the issue. Because oftentimes the leader says, well, I think we should have morning meetings. And then you know what? Most of the people are going to go along with what the leader says. So try, if you really care about people's input, and you should, then try to speak last so that they actually have a chance to give input before you kind of, skew the conversation. And then lastly, you want to use ground rules, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. Or you can call them meeting norms or agreements, but this is one of the number one things you can do to keep your meetings on track and being effective. All right, so those are a couple tips on fostering some dialogue. Here's just a couple of engagement techniques that I love that we use all the time in meetings large and small. And I know some of you might be thinking, well, I have a pretty stuffy group. I have worked the stuffiest of stuffies, and these techniques work. People want to do something kind of interesting and fun and interactive. All right, so first of all, let's talk about icebreakers. Icebreakers are great. Keep them short. Icebreakers should be related to the topic at hand. So for example, if you were having a meeting to talk about like let's say you're the party planning committee for the holiday party. The icebreaker could be, tell me about the best office holiday party you ever went to, something like that. Or if it is a new group that you're bringing together, it's the first time people have met each other, then you might want to do more of a relationship building icebreaker. Google that stuff, people. GTS it. There's so many great icebreakers. Keep them short. Small group, large group. This is an engagement technique that I don't think we use enough in our day-to-day meetings. And what this means is if you have more than like 8 people in a meeting, don't be afraid to say, we need to talk about X, Y, Z. We're going to break up into pairs or trios or half the room. We're going to talk about it, and then we're going to share out together. What the small group, large group does is it really raises the energy, number one. Number two is it really allows for more voices to get heard in the same amount of time. So 2, 4, 6 people are talking in a small group, and they're sharing, and they're really having some great conversation. Using Post-it notes. I know many of you already do this. This is tracking what people are saying, or maybe the small groups are going to create Post-it notes about their ideas, and we're putting them up so that everyone can see them. When people see what they talked about, then they feel heard, and that gives a really great visual clue that things are happening. Reflection. Don't be afraid to have some reflection time. Again, this will help you with your introverts, as will small group, large group conversations. So maybe you want to talk about something really important. Maybe you want to say, we really have to raise our EVS scores. I want everyone to just sit for a moment, maybe take a note, and really think about what are the 1 or 2 things that you really think matter. And then you let the group go silent. Right? And then you maybe engage in a round robin. So give some reflection time for people. Round robins are huge. Everybody uses these. Yes, Martha, I can talk a little bit about how to make these actions virtual. Icebreakers, just do it virtually. Small group, large group, you would use breakout rooms and give really specific instructions. In the virtual for Post-it notes, you would use a whiteboard on your Zoom or your Teams. Reflection, that's easy. You just have everyone go silent. Round robins, also very easy to do virtually. So a round robin is when we go around the horn, around the room, and everybody gives their opinion on something or answers a question. Here's the thing about round robins. First of all, don't overuse them, but make sure that especially if you have more than 4 or 5 people in a room, you want to make sure that the conversation, the answers are tight and succinct. So for example, if I'm going to do a round robin, I'm going to ask a very specific question, and I'm going to ask people to answer it within a sentence or 2, or maybe 60 seconds. Because round robins can suck up a lot of time if you have a lot of long story Larrys in your thing. So you want to keep it tight. Similar to a round robin is a hot potato, which is one of my favorite virtual techniques. And that's different than a round robin, because what happens in a hot potato is I might say, okay, Kristen Williams, do you prefer morning or afternoon meetings? And she would answer, and then she would then hot potato it to somebody else. This works great virtually as well as in person. And then you might say, let's hear from 5 people. And then your participants are the ones taking responsibility for hot potatoing the question around to different people. It's a great exercise. It works great in any group. A shot clock. So sometimes you want to make it fun and say, you know what? Let's brainstorm as many different ideas for how we're going to spend our training budget next year. We're going to do 2 minutes of brainstorming. Let's just get as many ideas as we can. Go, shot clock. And then you do a shot clock. And after 2 minutes, you'd have all these ideas. Or I often use this. I work with a lot of leaders, and a lot of leaders just like to talk a lot. So we will literally give people, you got 1 minute to report out. And when that minute's over, we move on. So you can use the clock in lots of different ways. These next 2, you can do them virtually if you have a whiteboard on your thing, but these are great in person. My favorites. One is called a continuum. And this is basically where you have people line up on a continuum. So you might say, okay, let's decide, do you prefer morning meetings or afternoon meetings? So you just have people line up by what they prefer. And then you start with one end of the continuum and you say, so tell me about your preference for morning meetings. What is it about morning meetings that you prefer? You say, thank you. And then you do a couple, and then you go to the other side of the continuum and you ask about what their experience is on the other side and what their preference is. It's an amazing thing to do, and it can really shift conversations. And I know some of you are thinking, my people would never get up and stand in a meeting. And I'm telling you, you could be wrong. I recently did a meeting for it was a federal agency. It was a regulatory agency, and they were the inspectors. And they were always having this debate whether they should be partners with industry, carrot or stick, partners or police with industry, carrot or stick. And so we had them line up on a continuum around, should we lean more towards carrot, more towards stick? And it was really fascinating because most of them really had similar ideas, but the way they were talking about them didn't work. Anyway, it was great. Vote with your feet is also very similar. So you might want to use this when you want to say, you know, you have a couple different choices. And you will put them around the wall, and people go and they stand by the choice that they like the best. So I'm going to be doing this one next week with a board of directors where they have to decide where their focus is going to be and where the focus is and where it's going to be. So they're going to walk to one. They're all going to walk to wherever they think their focus is now, and then they're going to walk to where their focus should be. It's a really simple exercise. It's really fun, and it really shifts the conversation. Vote with your feet. Or you could just say, if you want morning meetings, go to this side of the room. If you want afternoon meetings, go to this side of the room. So getting people up. And you can do these virtually as well if you do like a whiteboard thing. And the last one I'll talk about is hand throws. This is so easy in person, and I just recommend everybody try this at least once. So there's two different hand throws. So this might be, and you know, you guys can do this, I think, if you have the different hand recognitions here. So you might say, let's say you just want to ask people, are we getting what we need out of this meeting? And you have them do, I don't know if you guys can see me, you have them do like thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no, and thumbs across for meh. And then you say 1, 2, 3, throw, and people throw. Maybe it's about an idea. And then you have a really quick vision of how people are thinking or feeling about a subject or topic. You can do the same thing with numbers. You could be on a scale of 1 to 5. How many of you love this idea? 1 means I hate it. 5 means giddy up. And then you have them throw. And then once people's hands are up, then you could say, well, so 5, tell me what you like about it. 1, tell me what you don't like about it. But it's a way that everybody can suddenly see how people are thinking or feeling and where they are. It's just so simple, and it always, always works. We got to make sure people keep their hands up. All right, boom. So one of the things that we do at CareerStone is when we make our agenda after we thought about our purpose and the people, is we think about the different conversations, and we think ahead of time. Fist of 5, says Sherry. I love that. I'm going to steal that, Sherry. So we write an agenda like this. We think about what it is we need to talk about, and then we think about some engagement processes that we can use for that session. So we're thinking about it, and not everything's highly engaged, but we really do make our best effort to create as much engagement as we can when we are facilitating or leading meetings. It really helps. And most of the things I just talked about, you can do virtually. A couple more things you can do virtually is cameras on, cameras off. So you might say, everybody who wants morning meetings, put your cameras on. And then you talk to them for a while and find out sort of their thinking. All right, great. Everybody who wants afternoon meetings, you turn your cameras on, morning people off. So lots of fun ways you can do these things virtually as well. And the thing about virtual meetings is you do have to pump up your engagement with virtual meetings, because you know what people are doing during virtual meetings? They're shopping, they're going to the bathroom, they're eating, they're answering other emails, they're doing other work, they're playing video games. Like, it's crazy. So you want to make sure in virtual meetings that you are using chats and polls and you are engaging people right from the start. Okay. Hybrid meetings, a little more attention. These are the hybrid ones. We have people who are in person and virtual. Number one, you've got to know and test the technology before your meeting. Really understand it. Really start thinking about what the remote people are going to need to see. Do they need to see the in-room attendees? Do they need to see documents, physical documents, things that are created in the meeting? Think through that. Very helpful to have a tech producer or tech support so that if you are meeting leader, if you are leading the meeting, you're not also trying to manage the technology. Having virtual buddies or avatars are really important. And what I mean by here is, let's say Sherry was in the room, Zachary was virtual. Sherry is now Zachary's virtual buddy or avatar, virtual buddy. So she's going to make sure that Zachary's being heard. Or maybe as an avatar, we're going to pull a picture of Zachary at the chair on the around the table so that we know he's there. Again, you want to have someone moderating the chat if you're leading the meeting so that you can pay attention to it, and someone in the room as well. So you try not to have to do all those roles when you are leading a hybrid meeting, which are challenging. All right, game changer, people. Game changer is managing your participants. You know, this is, I think, where most meetings go astray, is that we are not managing our participants. And so what we want to do is really make sure we are taking the lead. Number one is to use ground rules. Your role as a leader is to maximize engagement and participation throughout the meeting. Ground rules will help you. Kristen says, some people excel at meeting emceeing. Does it cast a negative light if the leader passes the con should identify those who No, it's not, because Kristen, if you're facilitating a meeting and you're not the leader of the group, then you are a facilitator. And that is often, that's a great way to run a meeting. And it's not passing the torch. It's actually very smart for some leaders to do that. So ground rules. How often do you use ground rules? This is poll number 2, I think, poll number 1. Always, frequently, sometimes, never, not yet, but I plan to.
So we'll give everybody about 60 seconds or so to answer the question. But this has been so helpful, Mary, even right away. And the chat is really going wild. But one of the things that I find difficult is when you have brainstorming sessions. So the whole idea is to be sort of free form, but then at some point you do have to kind of narrow it down and be like, okay, we came up with all these great ideas. Now we need to go to planet Earth. And that can be really hard, you know, to go from creative to practical.
Well, so for brainstorming meetings, there's a couple of things. You know, there's a lot of research around brainstorming doesn't always necessarily work well. So if you're going to do brainstorming meetings, you want to set the criteria up ahead of time around what we're going to do, because oftentimes with brainstorming, some people can't resist poking holes in things. So you have to be really firm about what it is. It can be very helpful with brainstorming for the introverts to take some time off and like write things down on Post-it notes. So people are writing things down on Post-it notes, and then they're putting them up on the wall. If you just do a free form brainstorming, it can be a little, it mostly leans towards the extroverts who actually process externally and doesn't really help introverts. So I would use brainstorming meetings by making sure that you are having people silently write down their ideas, do them all out, and then build on that from there.
Yeah. I love, by the way, what was his name? Long Story Larry?
Oh, we're going to talk about Long Story Larry in just a minute.
I love that. I think everybody can relate to having at least one at some point.
Oh my goodness. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go forward. We've been on this poll long enough?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so.
All right, I'll give you guys 10 more seconds to answer this poll. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Which we got? Always 10%, winner, winner, chicken dinners. Frequently 31%, good for you. Sometimes 28%, never 10%. Oh, my people, not yet, but I plan to. Yeah, so ground rules are really important because ground rules both set the tone and the expectation for participant behavior. And it also then gives you permission as the leader to actually intervene or to encourage the good behavior. And it does a third thing. It actually gives permission to all the other participants to hold each other accountable for having the behaviors that we need in a meeting. I'm going to give you a bunch. You probably only need like 3 or 4 of these, but you want to really target them for what you need or based on the dynamics that you often see in your meetings. So one ground rule is speak for yourself. That means use I statements, don't speak for other people. One conversation, which means, you know, no sidebarring essentially. One topic at a time kind of means, you know, if we're talking about bananas, we're not going to talk about apples till we're done with bananas. Land the plane. That can have a little movement to it too, which basically means bottom line, your answer is be succinct. Respectful communication. If you're going to use that one, make sure you take a moment that people will create a shared definition of respectful, because believe it or not, we don't all have the same definition of that. Don't beat a dead horse. That means like if we're not going to keep revisiting stuff. Cameras on or cameras off. If you're a virtual hybrid, I think this is really important to have an understanding. Share the air, talking to you, my extroverts, or 3 before me. This means really making sure we're making space for other people. Full engagement. If you're in person, a little e-etiquette or e-courtesy, you know, are we allowing phones in our meeting? Are we like, what are we doing there? Timeliness, start on time, end on time. I was doing this for a law firm, and the leader, the head managing partner guy, said to me, Mary, we just can't seem to start our meetings on time. And he's like, do you have any ideas? And I said, well, I got one idea. He goes, well, what is it? I go, why don't you start your meetings on time? I mean, you're the head guy. If you start your meetings on time, then come on, like everyone else will. And don't let people, and don't recap for people when they come late, unless it's your boss. The ouch rule. So I facilitate a lot of meetings where sensitive things are discussed. And the ouch rule says that if somebody in the meeting says something that offends you or like ouches you, then you need to say ouch so that that person knows that they said something inappropriate or that ouched you, so that you guys can clean it up, because otherwise we just get offended by people all day long. The Vegas rule basically means for confidential meetings, what's said in here stays in here. The I can live with it rule. Oftentimes we use this with consensus decision making, which means basically, it may not be my favorite decision, but when I walk out of this room, I will support it and I will live with it. Using a parking lot is where we put things that are important but not germane to the meeting. So these are really great. So these are a couple of commonly used ground rules. Yeah, Donna, I love the ouch rule. It's such a great rule. It makes people take responsibility for how they're interacting with other people. Because if I was in a meeting and you said something that offended me and I decided not to say anything, I'm going to leave that meeting. I'm going to hate you for the rest of my life. This way, people have a chance to clean up any accidental matches they make. In the chat box, let us know what your favorite ground rules are that you use. Okay, this is my favorite part of this whole session, because this is really about what was before the parking lot. I can go back here. Before the parking lot was the I can live with it rule. All right. So you're going to design a great meeting. You're going to be all ready to step into, you're all ready to step into like your role, and you invite your people. And then these are the people that show up. You've got the Susie sidebar. Susie sidebar is the person. What does the land the plane relate to? That means being more succinct and bottom lining, right? So that's instead of like, you know, people that go on and on, like land the plane. What is it you're trying to say? Make sure everyone has a chance to contribute. I love it. No acronyms allowed, Martha. That's fantastic. Land the plane meets focus on the point. What is the takeaway? Yep, it could always be takeaway first, bottom line first. All right, so Susie sidebar. Susie sidebar is that person that's always like whispering to the side, always like, you know, doing a sidebar, and it can be very distracting in a meeting. And this is going to be in person. Like, I don't know, you would notice Susie sidebar virtually. Then, of course, we're going to have negative Neil or negative Nancy. This is the person that's always wah, wah, wah. They'll never work. I don't like it. They're always bringing everybody down, right? So the negative Neil or the negative Nancy. The next one I brought with me today is the overbearing Olivia or overbearing Oliver. And this is the person that is just takes up all the space in the meeting. Always the first one to answer, always has an opinion, always wants to like just hog the show and hog the floor. And it can just be just so annoying because no one else can get a word in edgewise. Elizabeth says, one ground rule I don't like is save questions to the end. I think perspective gets lost. Yeah, I agree. Agree to disagree without being disagreeable, says Dolores. I love it. All right, then we have Danny Dropout. And Danny or Donna, dropout, these are the people that really don't want to be in your meeting, and they're making it really clear to you that they don't want to be there. You know, if they're in person, they're like this, or they're on their phone. If they're virtually, they definitely have their cameras off, and they're not really responding because they're really not there. So Danny dropout. My things just went crazy. All right. Then we also have Broken Record Betty or Broken Record Bob. And this is the person that just keeps repeating the same thing over and over and over till you want to shiv yourself with a pencil. Or they might be revisiting the same decision we already made 3 meetings ago. And it's just is like soul crushing. The Broken Record Betty or no mansplaining. Oh my God, Martha, I'm going to make that a ground rule for my house. Broken Record Betty. Since others may, should they speak up since others mainly stay silent? I think overbearing Oliver and Olivia, I think others stay silent because they're over speaking. Then we've got Larry Longstory, which is a little different than overbearing Olivia. And this could be Lori or Larry Longstory. This is the person where if they needed 3 sentences to give you their point, they are going to take 30 paragraphs, and they're going to tell you a really, really long story before they even get to the point. So Larry or Lori Longstory. And then Tangent Tammy or Tangent Tommy. This is the person that's always like derailing the meeting with a different idea, or they go off topic, where we're talking about, like you're talking about morning meetings, and suddenly they're talking about someone's birthday party next week. Like just always going off topic. So these are some of the people that you are going to see in this meeting. Got it? So I think we have a poll. Yes, we do. Which behaviors do you find the most annoying when you are either leading a meeting or participating in a meeting? Which ones really make you go grr? So there's a poll up. Is it Susie Sidebar? Is it Negative Neil? Is it Overbearing Olivia? Is it Danny Dropout? Is it Broken Record Betty? Larry Longstory? Tangent Tammy? Or is it all of them?
These are wonderful. And I know for getting like work, I'm just choosing family members. And I have a lot of Broken Record Bettys and Larry Longstories. And they do make me want to like shiv myself with a pencil sometimes.
I'm telling you.
But we have a bunch of questions that are coming through, and I just want everybody to know that we're saving them to the end, and we're going to answer as many as possible. But there is one that I think is sort of a clarification from what you just said, Mary. How do you set ground rules like the ouch rule?
Yeah, so there's basically 2 ways you can set ground rules. Number 1 is, as meeting leader, you can say, you know, I'd like to offer these ground rules for us to help us be more effective. You explain what each one is. You should have them written down somewhere, and then you say to your group, you know, by a show of hands, can we all agree to do our very best to abide by these? And then people raise their hand. So that's number 1. You just introduce them, you offer them, you know, you volunteer them, you want to use them, but you discuss them. The other way to use ground rules is to have the group create the ground rules. So, hey, people, we're going to be having a series of meetings about XYZ topic. It'd be very helpful if we came up with some meeting ground agreements. So what are some of those that we could do? And then the group creates them. The first way is faster. The second way takes longer, but people do support what they help to create. So those are 2 ways you can do it. And if you've never used ground rules before, I would try with the first way. And I would say, hey, listen, you know, I want to try this new meeting technique. It's called meeting norms or meeting ground rules. Here's why I want to do this. Here's what they are. What do you all think? And for something like the ouch rule, again, you want to use the ouch rule when it's appropriate.
That's great. And I think we'll just give everybody a couple more seconds to answer, but there's one clarification too. All these rules will apply for standing meetings as well as for special meetings, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. And you just have to, you know, figure out, and these are just a handful. You just have to really know your audience, know what kind of meetings that you have, and just choose the ones that are going to be the most effective. So when I'm doing a meeting that is going to be contentious, I'm going to use like the ouch rule. I'm going to use the seek to understand rule, things like that. If I'm just running an everyday meeting, I might just be like an everyday meeting, like just a quick update meeting, like a team meeting. I might do like start and stop on time, full participation, that sort of thing, because we want to just be really effective. Timothy says for small groups, the flight attendant rule. Wait, like a flight attendant rule. I need a verbal response from each of you. I love that. Kaylee says sometimes we create ground rules, share with the group, and leave opportunities for others to add in additional rules as they see fit. Love that, Kaylee. That can be very helpful. That's like kind of nice combination of the two. I love this. I love these. Charlene says this is good because it helps us see ourselves too. Yeah. So in the chat box, now that you've done this, which ones drive you the most crazy? In the chat box, people, it's confession time. Tell me which one of these do you do? I will tell you, I am a Susie sidebar all day, every day, because I'm in a meeting. If it's boring, I'm going to talk to someone else. And usually I have something really funny that I want to say. And like, I can't let a funny go without being said. So I'm very bad about being Susie sidebar. What are you guys? Yeah, Martha, we're going to get to this. Katrina's a Susie sidebar. Kelly's a negative Nancy. We've got, because these are just normal human behaviors. And we do it. Overbearing Olivia. Emma says, I love to talk. Susie sidebar. Shannon says, I'm embarrassed to say I'm a long story. Yeah. Daddy dad jokes. I love it. I love it. All right, so let's talk about some. Here's what we got. Yeah, we're pretty evenly mixed here. All of them, 28% of you. Yep. Awesome. Love it. All right. Let's talk about some easy ways that you can intervene on these behaviors. If you have a Susie sidebar, couple things you can do. One, if you have the ground rules that say one conversation at a time, you can just simply say, hold up, everybody. Could we have one conversation at a time? You don't even have to call that person out. Or if you're in a meeting and you're standing and facilitate, you can go stand next to them when it happens. You don't really need to say to them, hey, do you want to share with us what you're telling, you don't want to embarrass people, but you can just kind of stop the action and say, hey, everybody, could we have one conversation at a time? If you are a participant and someone's sidebarring, you can say, hey, everybody, could we have one conversation at a time? I'm having trouble hearing. This works whether you're the leader or the participant. All right, the next one, negative Neil or negative Nancy. The thing we have to remember is that people who are like wah are often trying to be helpful. There's a lot of personality types where they're trying to be constructive, and what they do, they see the problems first, and they really want to highlight them to be helpful. So don't get really upset with them, but here's a couple of tips that you can do with negative Neils. One, be sure you acknowledge their concerns. You could say like, hey, Neil, you're right. That would be a concern. What are some of the issues that we need to be thinking about? So you could engage with it. Or you could say to negative Neil or negative Nancy, that's really interesting. How could we avoid that? How can we make that better? So instead of letting them take you down a down road of like, ask them for solution ideas. You could say, you know what? That's really important to acknowledge concerns. Let me write that down, and then we are going to come back to that later. Let's put that in the parking lot, but let's just continue brainstorming here. Thank them for raising the issue. Thank you, Neil, for raising that issue. Others, what do you think? One of the best things you can do when you have people like a negative Neil or broken record Betty is go back to the rest of the group to get more input. Neil has his concerns. What do others think? Boom. Now, always trust your group to some extent. Rabbit hole Rhonda. Oh my God, that's so funny. Overbearing Olivia. Now, the overbearing Olivia, overbearing Oliver, you are going to have to intervene, which means you are going to have to sort of stop the action. So, for example, let's say we're in a meeting and something comes up and Olivia was raising her hand or whatever. She wants to speak again. You want to acknowledge that. Say, hey, Olivia, I see that you have something to add. Would it be okay if we heard from a couple of the people that we haven't heard from yet, and then we'll come back to you? That's the kindest way to do it. Like Rhonda, we haven't heard from you in a while. I'd love to get your opinion on this, and then Olivia will come back to you. Or if Olivia is going on and on, interrupt. I usually just like, oh, Olivia, hold on 1 second. Let me make sure I get what you're saying. You're saying ABC, is that right? And I might put it on a flip chart. Great, hold on there. Let's get some other people's input on that. Boom. So you're interrupting her, you're validating her, and then you're getting other people's input on that. So those are some quick, easy ways to do that. Danny dropout. So this is where you could, first of all, again, remind the group of the ground rules. So if someone's clearly out, you could just halt the action and say, hey, everybody, remember we have a rule of full participation. Can I get everyone's attention? Or you can do a round robin. This is a great way to wake up Danny or Donna dropout because they're going to have to answer. If you're standing and facilitating, you can go stand next to them, make eye contact with them, or ask them a question. You could say, hey, Danny, we haven't heard from you in a while. I'd love to get your take on this. Bam, Danny dropout, Donna dropout, does not have to drop back in. So that's a couple ideas there. Broken record Betty. So again, you're gonna need to, this is a little bit more of a direct intervention. So if you have a flip chart, you might say, hey, Betty, I think we've already talked about that. How is what you're saying now different? You know, or you could say, Betty, thank you so much. I think we've already, I think we've already covered that. Is there something different that we're not seeing? Or you could say, great, thanks again, Betty. Who has something different to add? And then you continue with the process. The thing about broken record Betty or broken record Bob is because for some reason they're not feeling heard. So you want to make them feel heard, and then you want to turn it back over to the group. Larry Longstory. Lord, people, I have no idea how to do Larry Longstory. Larry Longstory is the bane of my existence. Here's the best I can say to you. Use the bottom rule for ground rule for bottom lining. So, this is why I like to land the plane, because you don't have to say anything. You just go like this. And if they know that, they'll stop it. Go stand next to them when they get long-winded. Ask then, or just interrupt them and say, I'm sorry, Larry, great story. And I'm a little lost. I always use I statements. I'm a little lost. Could you bottom line this for me? Or could you let me know how this is connected to our agenda? And then if you have a lot of Larry Long stories, then you might just have a conversation with them in private saying, hey, love your stories, and we don't have enough time in our meeting to hear them. So usually Larry Long stories want to provide a lot of context. So their intention is good, but it is, Victor, make it a game, so timer 30 seconds, shot clock, people. I'm very comfortable with saying to people, let's try and keep our answers to 30 or 60 seconds, especially if you have long-winded people, because it's just going to run you over time. And then tangent, Tammy, this is really easy. Say, hey, that's really interesting. And how is this related to this agenda? You've got to name it to tame it. If I'm facilitating a meeting and we're clearly on a tangent, I'll say, hey, are we on a tangent? Is this a tangent? Everybody will tell you if it is or isn't. And boom. So ground rules, and then you put the tangents in the parking lot. This is one of the easiest ones to intervene on. So it just takes someone to say, hey, I think we've lost the topic, or I think we're on a tangent. Smart people go on tangents is what we do. So make sure, and then if you have a parking lot at the end of the meeting, then you have to remember to determine what you're going to do with the parking lot. You're going to address those issues then, or you can set up another meeting. Meeting conflict happens. I know we're running a little bit over here. A couple quick ideas for when you have people are arguing in a meeting. Do not let them derail the meeting. It's important to get different viewpoints. You want to intervene and stop the action. Okay, if it's just going too long, separate the issue. Say, okay, summarize and validate. So, okay, so, Victoria really wants to have lemon pie for the dessert, and Tom really wants to have apple pie, right? Did I do that right? All right, others, what do you think? And you invite other people in. Then you summarize again, and then you determine what next steps are, whether you're going to make a decision, whether we need more information before we decide on our pie, are we putting this in the parking lot, et cetera, et cetera. Is shut up in color acceptable? Recap and follow up. This is quick and easy, but so many meetings don't do it. So here's my poll. How frequently do the meetings that you attend, not that you lead, but how frequently do the meetings you attend always include a recap and next steps? How often do they do that? This is one of the things that what happens in meetings is we're usually running over time, and then we forget to do this, but it's critically important that you've taken people's time, and you've got to make sure that you are going forward. Justin Howdell says, how do you ensure small talk at the start of a meeting doesn't take over too much time and direct back? Oh, so here's what recurring team meetings. Well, here's one idea, Justin. My team and I do this. We literally set a timer. We literally say, you know, we're going to have small talk for 5 minutes. And then, or if we've forgotten to say how long, we negotiate it because I don't want any small talk. Or we negotiate it. And then at some point, I'll say, okay, everybody, we need to get going. Is that cool? Boom. So sometimes just name it to tame it. Charlene says, what is the best rule to help people who like to use meetings to air gripes inappropriately? Well, you might have no gripe zone. You might have a ground rule that says something like no griping, positive thoughts only, axes. What's the expression? Sharpen your axe at the door or leave your axe at the door, things like that. All right, we're going to go forward now. All right, so look at this. Like, so we got some ways like we can really do this. And by the way, if you're not the meeting leader, it's okay for you as a participant to speak up and say, hey, can we do a quick recap or what are our action items? Every meeting that we facilitate or that we are in, my team and I, we're always like, what are our do outs? What are the next steps? What are the action items? What's the recap? Take the time to do that. I love that Marianne says all of their meetings end with the next step. Here's a really easy way to do it. Make sure that every action item has a follow-up, has an owner and a due date. The owner is the person that's supposed to make it happen. Every action item needs a clear deliverable, who's doing it, and the owner. You as a meeting leader is responsible for making sure people follow up with their action items. You can delegate that responsibility, but it's your job as a meeting leader to make sure these things happen. Finally, my last thing, be a good participant. I've just shown you different ways that you can, as a participant or a leader, be good at it. You can help support the ground rule. It's everybody's job. The more people that are invested in being good participants and bringing good meeting behaviors, the easier your job will be as a meeting leader. Help enforce ground rules. If you're a participant, be prepared. Know what you're there for. Anticipate what information you need to bring. When people ask you a question, be succinct, be specific, answer it directly. If you don't know the answer, don't just make stuff up. Just say, you know what, I'm not really sure. Let me get back to you by the end of the day. And finally, show your face. Now, I know you virtual people and the hybrid people are going to hate me, but showing your face on meetings when you're virtual is actually kind of important. It reminds people that you are there. It helps promote your brand. It helps people see you as engaged. So even if you are going to turn it on for a few minutes, then you turn it off for a few minutes, turn it on, but show your face. It really helps people build trust and communicate with you. These are my big 5 for making your meetings matter and making over your meetings. My last tip, get some feedback. So if you're running a regular meeting, at the end of your next meeting, do a plus delta. Ask your participants, what works well with this meeting? What could we do more of, less of, or differently? This takes 2 or 3 minutes, and you can really learn about how your meeting can be shifted just a little bit to make a better meeting. Boom. I am not really surprised I went over because I know it was 45 minutes, but I get so excited about this. So in the chat box, your biggest takeaway, something you'll try, appreciation. And then I'm more than happy to stay on for a few minutes, Candace, if you have some more questions you want me to answer. As I breathe.
Sure. Well, first of all, I told everybody you had an awesome PowerPoint, so I was right. So, and I love those images. And during the holidays, I have several. What is he, Larry? Long story? Is that it?
Story.
Yeah. So I have several in the back of my mind. I'm going to have to not call him that. But I'm just looking at some of the questions. So, if you have people who are not really participating, what's your thought about dismissing them from the session or not re-inviting them, I guess, for the next time?
So if they're not really participating, well, a couple of things. One, if they're just dropping, they need to be there and they're dropping out, I'm going to do a Danny dropout sort of thing. I'm going to ask their opinion. I'm going to do a round robin. I'm going to say, hey, engagement. If they're not participating, I might also then have a conversation with them. Hey, I noticed that you weren't really participating in the meeting. What's that about? And get curious. They may not be needed in the meeting, or maybe they don't feel like they have a role in the meeting. So I'd get curious about that. And if I really thought like, I don't really need them, they're not contributing anything, I probably would stop inviting them.
Yeah.
It's very contextual.
Just looking at the chat, the idea about setting ground rules is very popular. And yeah, I'm just flipping through. Yeah, most ground rules, leader speaks last, that kind of thing. Be mindful to recap. Those appear to be real highlights. So yeah, this really has been wonderful. Thank you so much, Mary. I really appreciate it.
I could talk for hours on this stuff because, we are people spend something like between 30 to 65% of your time in meetings. And research shows that something like 65% of time in meetings is not well used. So the more that we can really be intentional and pay attention to how we are using our time and how we're using other people's time, how many of us just love it when meetings are canceled? We don't love it because they're good meetings. We love it because we need our time back. So
I was just talking about that, by the way, about how excited I am when meetings are canceled.
Yeah.
But I do have a few quick reminders for everybody. So like I said, check your inboxes because we're going to send you a link to this entire session, and you'll have the PowerPoint so you can look at it at your leisure. Don't forget to download the additional resources on the console. And I just want to say that on behalf of GovLoop, NextGen, and our Alliance partners, so that's Gov White Papers and WAPA, we really hope you enjoyed the training today. We hope you got a lot out of it. I actually got several ideas for the next meeting I run, so I want to say thank you. I'll tell you how they go. And I just want to say we really appreciate the work that all of you do, and thank you so much, Mary, for taking time today.
Thank
Have
you.
a great
Happy
day,
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Oh, happy Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.